What's going on, everybody? It's your boy, Scott Proctor, and welcome into the second BVM Sports College Football Primer. I'm joined by Brad Edwards, BVM Sports College Football Analyst, man, and it's a good time to be talking. The college football playoff final rankings have been released. Let's talk about that, man. Did the College Football Committee get things right with their final rankings of Georgia at 1, followed by Michigan, TCU, and Ohio State rounding out the top 4?
Yeah, for me, this is a pretty easy no. They didn't get it right. And I say this not every year, but most years. And the reason I do is because the committee said before it ever started this exercise, more than 9 years ago, that its goal was to get the 4 best teams. And they continue to reiterate that, 4 best. Well, to me, best is who you think would win if these teams started playing head to head. Like if Team A you think would beat Team B 8 times out of 10, then Team A is better than Team B. Yep. And unfortunately, that's not what they do. Now, I do think the approach they take, which qualifies probably as the 4 most deserving teams, that's what the majority of fans want to see. And that's fine. If that's what you want, just don't say that it's something other than what it is. So right. I don't believe TCU is one of the 4 best teams. Are they one of the 4 most deserving? I believe based on the regular season that was undefeated and the conference championship game that they lost in overtime. Yeah. Sure, I can go for that. But not only do I not believe that TCU is better than Alabama, I also don't believe that TCU is better than Ohio State, who the committee seeded them ahead of. So I think the seedings are out of whack. I think Michigan catches a break by playing a weaker opponent in the semifinal, because the committee isn't ranking those 4 teams based on how good they are. They're ranking them on, the perceived quality of their regular season performance, if that's the way to put it.
No doubt about it. I mean, you kind of got to it there at the end. I think Michigan is the biggest winner of these rankings. I mean, getting TCU. So again, you would have Alabama at what, the 4th spot then if it was up to you?
Yeah, look, we're just doing 4 best. Now, if you're looking at resumes, once you start throwing criteria in there, in my opinion, you're not looking at best anymore.
Sure.
You're putting conditions on it. And when you start to put those conditions on it, there's not much of an argument for Alabama. I mean, they played 2 teams that were top 15-ish. Yeah. They lost to both of them. Sure, both were on the road on the last play of the game, all that. I get it. Bryce Young wasn't at 100% in either of those games. I get that too. But what do you have to go off of that's a signature win for Alabama that tells you that they're one of the 4 most deserving teams? There's really not anything there. So once again, I'm fine with TCU being one of the 4 most deserving. I just don't think if it comes down to it that many people would say they think that they're better than Alabama or would beat Alabama, 6-7 times out of 10. No doubt. So if you want 4 most deserving, if that makes you feel good, then the committee got it right for you.
Yeah, and they should say that then, right? They should say that that's what it's about, getting the 4 most deserving instead of
they won't, because they want to redefine words and they want to have their own definition of the word best. No doubt. I'm not going for it.
No doubt about it. We shouldn't, Brad. Let's talk about a couple of these matchups though. And what chance you give each of these underdogs? Obviously, TCU against Michigan and Ohio State against Georgia. What chance do you give each of these underdogs to kind of pull an upset here in the semifinals?
Well, I do give TCU a chance against Michigan. I think that Michigan has the ability to struggle in the passing game. And if TCU can stop the run, and that's an if, but if they can, then on a given day, Michigan might not put a lot of points on the board, and it's possible to outscore them. And I think that's the hope for TCU. On the other side, I think we've seen it a couple times this year, but certainly saw it in the SEC championship game. Georgia's weakness defensively, and they're still very good on defense, despite what they lost from last year's team. Their weakness is in the secondary, and they can be exploited. LSU threw for over 500 yards between their 2 quarterbacks.
Right.
So, I mean, obviously, Ohio State can throw the ball. Now, they're going to be without their best receiver, Jackson Smith and Jigba, who has been out for most of the season anyway, is not going to be back. So, is Ohio State good enough to exploit Georgia's weakness on defense? And I say, weakness, relatively speaking. I don't think there's anything that I would want to face on Georgia's defense, but I think Ohio State's better equipped than Michigan to be able to score more points on Georgia. I think the other side of it is Stetson Bennett, it seems like once every 3 games or so, goes out and throws a couple of picks.
Yeah.
So on a good night, Stetson Bennett is as effective and as efficient as any quarterback in the country, and that's why he's a Heisman finalist.
Right.
But every now and then, maybe more often than some of the top quarterbacks, he has the not so good night. And if you can catch Georgia, whether it's Ohio State or Michigan, if you can catch Georgia on that night, then you've got a shot against them. And so I don't think Georgia's a slam dunk to win it, but I do think that they're a heavy favorite.
No doubt about it. You mentioned Stetson Bennett being a Heisman finalist, and obviously those Heisman finalists were announced earlier this week. Let's talk a little bit about that because, Brad, you were a Heisman voter for 12 seasons, I believe. Explain to us first how that voting process goes and why you think it might be or might require a bit of an overhaul.
Yeah, look, I understand why the voting process is the way it is because it was put together in 1936. That was the first Heisman vote.
That's telling.
Now, okay, so, or 1935, I'm sorry. 1936 was the first AP poll. 1935 was the first Heisman vote. So when you go back then, there was no TV. People couldn't, watch a team on the other side of the country play. And there obviously was going to be some, if not a ton of regional bias in the voting, right? So they had a lot of voters divided up into 6 different regions of the country with an equal number of voters from each region. And that was just kind of assumed that, okay, everyone's going to be biased toward their local players, but they can't just vote for one. They have to vote for 3. So you put 3 players on your ballot. Your number 1 pick gets 3 points. Number 2 is 2 points. Number 3 gets 1 point. And that's the way it works. And for a lot of the history of the award, that made perfect sense. The problem is today that you have 900 and something voters when you include all the living former winners who also get a vote. And there are too many people voting who don't even watch college football on a regular basis because they must have the same number in every region, which means a place like the Northeast, where I live, where college football isn't that big, you still have to have the same number of voters as you have in the Southeast or the Midwest or the Southwest. And so inevitably, there are people who aren't paying as much attention. And then there are others who are, on a given Saturday, are paying really close attention to one team that they cover, but they might not be watching all the other teams as closely as they should be to be a Heisman voter. So here's my belief, what they need to do. I think we have long, when I say long, double-digit years now, been at a point where there are so many former players and coaches who work in the national media, who cover college football, and their job is to not just watch one team, but to watch as many as possible every week. I think there should be a panel of, let's just say, 20 to 25 voters of former players and coaches who are in those positions. And if you want to divide it up based on what conference that they played in or if a coach, like where he spent most of his career, and you want to try to balance it out that way to avoid, regional or conference biases, that's fine. Okay, I can go for that. But to me, let those people who have the trained eyes and are watching every game vote on who they believe are the most outstanding players. Because I can tell you, if you do this, every now and then you will have a lineman win, an offensive or defensive lineman. And for me, I can't speak for everyone, but for me, that would do wonders for the credibility of this award. Especially if it was a lineman who wasn't on a playoff contending team.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what it should be about. I think now the pieces are in place for that to be able to happen. Someone just needs to be willing to change. And when you get in tradition in college football, as we've seen, it takes a long time for change to finally come around. Maybe it will. It has in some other areas for sure. But this is kind of the last holdout. The big holdout is the Heisman and its voting process.
No doubt. I love that idea, Brad. And you kind of mentioned it there. Change in the NCAA and college football don't always go together. But I agree. I think it's time. And I really like your proposal as well. I mean, get these former players who, again, as we see on, ESPN and these other major networks who talk college football for a living, who watch college football for a living. I would expect those would be the guys most suitable, guys and women, men and women, most suitable to, vote on this award.
The thing is, Scott, and I say this as someone who covered college football at a national level for a long time.
Right.
But having not played or coached at that level of the game, my eyes are trained to follow the ball. And I think 98, 99% of the people out there who watch the sport do what I do. They watch the ball.
Fair.
I've worked with people who have that ability to see everything at once. And it blows my mind how they can watch one play live and they can tell you not only what routes were run, but also who pulled on the offensive line and all. And people who see it all, those are the ones who need to be voting because they know not only what these linemen are doing, but they understand what they're supposed to be doing, right? And so you know what they're doing well, you know what they're not doing well. And most of us, 99% of those 900-something people who are voting, they have no idea how to grade a lineman.
No clue.
And so there's no chance of those people winning an award or winning the Heisman because
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Probably last question I got for you, Brad, before we get up out of here, man. Obviously, some other big news in the college football landscape here recently. That's Deion Sanders leaving Jackson State to become the next head coach at Colorado. What do you make of this move, and how big is this for both Colorado and the Pac-12?
I think it is. It's obviously big for Colorado. As long as that program has been down, they needed a shot in the arm, and this certainly would be that. Now, it doesn't guarantee that it's going to work, but from a publicity standpoint, they're going to get all the publicity they want, at least for the upcoming season for sure.
Yeah,
I would expect there's going to be a whole lot of movement on that roster. You know, guys going into the transfer portal, guys being pulled out of the portal to land on that roster. I think you'll see something very similar to what you saw with Michigan State in 2021 when Mel Tucker came in. I want to say he got 20-something players out of the portal, and they went from being a bad team the previous year to being a for stages of the season, a top 10 team.
With Kenneth Walker, right? Yeah.
I'm not saying that Colorado is going to make that type of turnaround, but look, when you're looking at the Pac-12, and there are very few teams that recruit at a high level in that league. You get a bunch of good transfers in all at once, you can turn things around pretty quickly. And I think we'll see some of that from Colorado. The other thing with Deion, look, like I said, he's got to get attention. He hasn't yet proven that he can build a program. He hasn't been anywhere long enough. The other question is, obviously Jackson State is not the type of program that is going to get a lot of attention on a consistent basis.
Right.
There's not a lot of scrutiny. That's going to change to a large degree here. And so I think that's an issue with Deion. Is he going to get frustrated if things don't go well? And there's a lot of negativity because that's inevitably going to happen in any Power 5 program if things aren't going well. We just haven't seen him have to deal with it. That doesn't mean that he won't or won't be able to. We just haven't seen him have to. And so those are some of the questions. But yeah, I think for Colorado, it's a great hire, and it's an opportunity to make some really positive changes in a hurry. Look, there's some negative that comes along with it, which is that you're going to have a whole bunch of people who maybe love the university and that football program who are just going to up and leave. But that's the way things are today, and that's part of the price you pay for trying to win.
No doubt about it. And that's what it's about. It's about winning, and hopefully Prime can bring that over there to Boulder. But that was awesome, Brad. Great insight as always, man. Thanks so much for joining us. And make sure you go out there and like, comment, and subscribe to catch me and Brad talking college football every single week. But for myself, Scott Proctor, and Brad Edwards, we'll catch you next week on the next BVM Sports College Football Primer.
Thanks for watching. Feel free to check out our other videos, and don't forget to smack that subscribe button down below while you're at it. Also, for more great and original content, head right over to bvmsports.com.